Okay, so we're outdoors today here in Texas. Luckily it's not too hot, but we're gonna have a lot of fun exploring this countryside. We have a couple of different options and lenses today, but I think I'm gonna stick to a 50 and an 85 pretty much for most of it. I like the depth that I get. I like to be able to get wider than 2.8. I'm pretty spoiled like that. So I think I'm gonna stick to that pretty much most of the day, which limits me a little bit, especially when I go inside this old house that we have, but I think we'll be wide enough on a 50. I hope we are, we're gonna find out. But we're gonna explore the countryside and see what we get, do a lot of thin depth of field looks and multiple lighting styles, so stay tuned. All right, so we're out here in the country, west of Houston, Texas. It's kind of a rural, country-ish looking setup, but what I've opted to do, and what I've asked the model to work with, is a not country girl setup. Yeah, we're shooting glamour. Yeah, we're gonna shoot some sexy images, hopefully get something out into publication, but we're not gonna go for the stereotypical country girl. So we have all kinds of different sort of themes that we're gonna do. We're gonna work with this old house, which you guys will see in a little bit. We have a beautiful rural landscape here of 112 acres. It's gonna be amazing. We're gonna go over a 100% natural light setup where we're gonna place her in a certain pocket of shadow, which is gonna be really important to find that location. I think I see a couple of tree locations out there that are gonna be really great because we do have some bright sun today. And of course, with that bright sun, we have to modify the light somehow. And we're gonna go over using a scrim in a key spot, even a small scrim, as you can see here in the shot, to try to use that sunlight in the best possible way. Naturally, we're also going to cover the use of a strobe to go directly against the sun and create a balanced look. This combined with some great post-production techniques, and we can have a very hyper-real look, sort of an HDR look without the HDR corniness. As we go over every single one of them, you're going to see all the camera settings pop up on screen. You're going to see any important details pop up on screen. So you're going to get all the information you need, exactly how we're crafting these shots. And don't forget, at the end of it, we're also going to have retouching to show you how we put it all together. All right, so far so good. I'm really liking how I'm using the background, the dark trees there, to balance the exposure, considering I have her in this little pocket of shadow. That's what I'm trying to hope for here. If I can make that work, then I should have a balanced exposure. I think the best part is, of course, that I can definitely come back in later in raw processing and bring back that sky if I need to and do a fake fill light. But for the moment, looking great. Shall we, let's turn around the other way? Kind of lean on the tree, sort of, back to the tree. Yeah, sort of like that. Good. Oh, I love that. Perfect. Yeah, that's a good drama. I think that this whole theme works really well, that kind of hippie nature girl thing on the tree. That kind of works. This setup really isn't a setup. It's a matter of getting off your butt and looking for the shot. If you get around in your location, wherever you may be, you can hunt around and usually do pretty well finding a spot. It's also a technique to use when you find yourself outdoors wanting to try something, but you didn't bring any equipment. We all find ourselves in that situation. A lot of times hunting for the right spot, even if it's not really obvious, can make or break your shoot. In this particular setup, I found a pocket of trees that didn't have any light marbling coming through thin branches. Luckily, the trees are nice and full right now this time of year. So I had a nice soft pocket of trees. Now, if I put her under the tree, then obviously she's going to have very soft, diffused light despite the sunny day. However, everything behind her, in this case, it went off for many yards, it's significantly brighter because it's in bright sun as opposed to where she was in a shadow. However, instead of trying to shoot her completely against the sky, though I couldn't completely avoid it, or against a bright area, I try to find a dark pocket of trees behind her, thus minimizing the difference between the shady spot exposure and the background. Now, there's going to be some variance, of course, depending on situation to situation. But a lot of times, just thinking about the background, especially if you can get the background far away, this is going to give you some separation without having to go crazy with, f1.4 or something to create separation, and still have the clarity you need for glamour. So I was hunting for dark areas behind her as I moved around, knowing that she was in that beautiful pocket of shade under that tree. That's going to make the light nice and diffused. So exposing for her would make sure that she looked great, but the background would be a little bit bright. Next up, we were shooting in open sun and trying to find some modifiers that would work for it. Now, a lot of people say not to shoot in point-blank open sun in the middle of the afternoon. At this point, it was about 3:30 in the afternoon, but still. However, you can make it work if you bring the right tools. And in this particular case here, I actually brought the wrong tool. Yep, in my haste, I did not bring out my large scrim, which I would have had my buddies set up really comfortably to cover Shelby completely shooting in the open sun. I had to quickly borrow Joseph's 5-in-1, which had, I think, a 30-inch or 32-inch little white scrim in it, a one-stop scrim. And we busted that out, and I just decided, okay, I'm going to have to shoot half portraits or headshots on this look, but I think I can make it work. And that's just improvising on your feet, depending on what you're dealing with. It's what you have to do sometimes. Now, apart from the fact that Joe looks absolutely amazing here, holding the scrim above Shelby, let me explain real quick how that works. When you use a scrim above a subject in broad open sunlight, a couple of things can happen. First of all, your scrim can be rated to a different type of stop value. In other words, it can be a 2-stop scrim or a 1-stop scrim, maybe 1.5. There are various silks that can be used that can be as small as a 1/4 stop and less. These are used for various different things. The key thing you need to remember is if you have a 1-stop scrim, like we did here, what that means is that, all things being equal, if you put this scrim on top of your subject, you're going to drop about a stop of light on the subject compared to the rest of the environment. Since the scrim is small, obviously, it's not doing any light diffusion on the background, or anything much really around Shelby at all. So we have the sun a little bit behind her, and the scrim actually kind of to camera right and a little bit behind her. And it's going to create a little bit of a diffused sort of light pocket around her and a little bit of that rim light on her hair. It's going to look really great. But what do you have to remember? When you're losing that stop, the background would get brighter because you're going to expose for your subject, of course. So the background's going to get brighter. This is not unlike when we found a shady spot under a tree. The background's brighter. So you have to try, if you can, to find a dark background, something that's going to work for the stop loss. You got to account for it. And when you use a 2-stop scrim, you're going to have super diffused light, but you really got to consider that the background's going to get really bright. It's a great opportunity to shoot in open sun when you want the location, but you got to consider the stop loss. All right, so we're out here. We have this beautiful old barn. I'm probably going to try some natural light stuff here just to see what happens. Fully natural light, maybe with a scrim, don't know. But of course we have the trusty strobe. In my particular case, I have a Paul C. Buff Einstein. Also, rest in peace, Paul C. Buff. We all miss him. So I've got an Einstein here running a 22-inch beauty dish. I've got a bit of a grid on it just to kind of control my light. I love to try to use a strobe outdoors to balance with the sun, hopefully in a way that doesn't look completely like it's a strobe, obviously strobed. Try to make it look as natural as possible. It's not always possible, and sometimes a really commercial kind of fake look works really, really well. So we got that today. Standard issue battery, running it down below. I'm gonna work it really well. Also, a quick tip, if you are gonna use a battery and a strobe outdoors, make sure you turn off your modeling lamp, okay? Apart from the fact that you'll drain your battery at 4 times the speed at least, it's also not good for the battery to have that constant draw of power. So you go in there, make sure your modeling lamp is off. But let's go ahead and get started with some natural light and see what the heck happens. So you have to trust me on this. I think it can work, but I'm probably gonna throw a strobe at it later, so let's get started. So here again, we're not doing the country girl thing. Shelby may be a country girl, self-admitted, I might add, but we're not doing anything obvious country girl. We're gonna go bikini on a tractor. Keep that focus point on her face because we are at a very shallow depth of field. Perfect, perfect. This is creating a very interesting little pocket of light that I really, really like shooting here. Really enjoying this spot right here. It's creating just a little bit of glow behind her, but still creates some interest that there's something going on behind her that's dark. Yeah, I really love that. Fantastic. Trying to keep my focus plane as even across her as I can. If I shoot from too high up, I'm gonna have her face in focus, but not her body in focus at the depth of field that I'm at. We actually ended up doing that entire barn set similar to the first set, where it was just a found area. We dug around until we found a spot that worked well in front of the tractor. We actually were going to go into the barn and do some strobing, but we ran into literally a beehive and subsequent bees around it. We decided to ditch that idea really quick, which reminds me this is a great opportunity to remind you that while you're shooting, be sure to take frequent breaks. Be sure to not take any significant risks, especially when outdoors. There's no need to risk yourself or your team or the talent because you want to get a specific shot that you must have for some reason. A beehive with 100 swarming bees, it's time to get the hell out. So let's move on. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we have a strobe set up. we have a sun that's barely sort of behind her off to her left, all right? So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to balance a little bit of strobe with the sunlight. Now in this particular case, I'm not gonna have the luxury of shooting wide open. I'm not gonna be able to get f2 or even f5.6 or anything like that because of the nature of the sync speed with the strobe and the wireless transmitter. So because of that, I've already figured out that we're at about f10 on this one, but that's okay because we want clarity on the background. We wanna make sure those clouds back there, which you can barely see, are gonna be in the shot and that everything has a sort of a hyper clarity to it. So we've got it dialed in, we got our grid running. Let's have a go and see what we get. All right, I'm shooting nice and low because I wanna sell the idea that the sky is exposed properly. Because of that, I wanna get nice and low to show the sky. Good, good. I am shooting with a battery pack and a strobe, so I've got to let it recycle. Very, very important that I don't shoot too quick. I'm going to get ahead of it, and I might miss the perfect pose because I'm ahead of the cycle. Good. Chin down just a little bit, Shelby. Perfect. This is sort of a standard issue kind of studio glamour setup pose, but I'm taking it out here to the middle of the woods. And you'll note that on these unedited shots, that in some of them, the sky is still pretty darn bright, and the cloud texture isn't quite apparent. But that's okay, because we can bring a lot of that back in raw processing. To make the sky look perfectly even and exposed properly, I probably would have gone up an entire stop. Finally, we decided to use the most obvious location on the property, and that was the little farmhouse. There was no electricity inside or frankly anywhere, so I still considered using the outside of the house and just inside the door to be outdoor lighting. So let's see what we did in here. A completely different look here. Here again, I want to make sure that I'm not doing country girl even in a beat up country house like this. Going to keep a super thin depth of field, but now we're doing this full length shot right here. It is super important to keep my focal plane exactly even with her because we're going to use a very thin depth of field at about f2, f2.2. We want to make sure she remains in focus for the entire length of her body. Very, very important. Good pose. Doing a bit of a progression here. Not necessarily editorial style, but we're going to tell a little bit of a progression of her starting on the porch and then going into the house. The sun is pretty dang diffused right now, so I'm just trying to work with it before it changes. We got a little bit of thunder rolling in the distance, but that is the nature of working outdoors. You have to just improvise. Good work. Love that. Let's have you standing on the porch now. Excellent. Let's go for some full length. Love those shoes. Totally doesn't make sense, but I love it. It makes sense, but it doesn't. That's what's great about it. Brilliant. There's a window back there, so I'm going to make sure on that door, make sure I'm not in the shot. Good, good. We're getting really lucky on a nice diffused light source, and because the background is that porch and it has a shadow on it, we have a beautiful separation between the light colors that we have on her and the dark in the back. It's working out really well. This is a fantastic spot to work with. Excellent. I then wanted to explore the open doorway. I knew the exposure would be considerably darker there, but I wanted to see what we could do. All right, so we're going to move her into the doorway again. We're keeping the progression going of the story we're trying to tell, kind of creating some intense kind of feel. This is really, really great. We have a nice dark background behind her. However, the stops, I mean, we're down at least 2 or 3 stops on this. So I am adjusting as I work to try to accommodate that, keeping it f2.2. The reason why is that I have a 1.8 rated lens, my 85 1.8. I don't want to push it to 1.8 if I don't have to, just to get the light that I need. That's looking really good. All right, so we still got to sell that she's in a doorway. So I'm going to move this direct. Perfect, Shelby, that's brilliant. I love that. As if the doorway wasn't dark enough, we decided we were going to shoot inside the house. Now, although this video clip has the ISO pumped really high, makes it look like it's brighter than it is, you have to remember it is quite dark in here. So I had to determine if I could pull this off with a nice slow shutter, enough that I could handhold, of course, and an ISO that was going to be reasonable. I did not want a super gritty, edgy film type of look, so ISO 6400 was not going to work. We do have a lot of windows bringing in a lot of light, but at the end of the day, this is really dark for glamour. All right, so again, we're super, super low light. Joe, thanks for bringing in the reflector. Trying to sell the kitchen idea. The fact is, there's a kitchen here. By making sure we show enough of it. There's an old stove. It's kind of uncomfortable environment, but that's the theme we're going for. It's kind of retro, vintage, sexy thing going on. Brilliant, love it. See what a full length looks like. Pop back here real quick. Yeah, keep rocking it. There you go. That works. I've actually been in this house many times. I've never shot the kitchen, so this is definitely looking pretty neat. We have extremely low light. I don't think the footage is going to show you how low it is in here. We can barely see our hand in front of our face. Okay, not really, that's an exaggeration. But this is looking really, really great despite the low light situation. I'm at 1.8 on a 51.4, 80th of a second, so I'm having to keep real careful, keep my hand real steady at ISO 1250 on these. But Joe's actually helping me with a silver reflector to get in a little bit of extra light from that door. The reason why it's a silver reflector is going to be far more reflective than a white one. As much as I love soft diffuse light, it definitely won't move enough light. So we're getting some full length in this old beat up kitchen. Another thing to consider when you're doing this sort of thing is, another thing you can't tell from the video, guys, is that it's fairly uncomfortable in here. It's not even a full-on Texas summer yet, but it's uncomfortable enough in here. You have to consider about your talent's comfort. So Shelby, I've been asking her, probably annoying her with if she's okay with water, is she okay with being comfortable. It's very important that you want to get the performance you need. Beautiful, perfect. Here again, shooting fairly thin at 1.8, try to separate her from that background. But I got to keep my focus plane nice and thin. Shelby, let's watch out, make sure that elbow on the left side doesn't come up because that's where the light source coming. So just use the right elbow if you want to use your arms much, okay? With an implied set going on. Gosh, that reflector actually is making a bit of a shadow behind her, Joe, believe it or not. Can you move a little bit more behind me and try to minimize it?
Right there?
Yes, I like that. So reflector is almost being used, guys, as if it was a strobe behind us, but I prefer that natural look. If I hit a strobe in here, it'll be way too bright. So a little bit of that natural light coming in. I want to repeat, it is crazy humid in here and uncomfortable, but we're making it work. All right, Shelby, twist your upper body a little bit more this way. I love the tattoo in the back, that's brilliant. Yep, I'm super low, guys. I'm on the floor right now trying to match her level. I don't want to shoot from above her, that's not going to be flattering at all. Selling the idea that we're in a kitchen, selling the idea that she's wearing tennis shoes and the little sexy boy short looking things. That's what we're trying to do here. We're creating glamour, but we have to do it intentionally, right? I admit, for the looks that I was going for today, I seldom push the ISO as high as 2000. But in this room, I really want to try to make it work, and I'm hoping that the little bit of noise that's been introduced actually helps the shot's overall feel. All right, so that's a wrap with the outdoor lighting tutorial. I know it's every time you go outside, you have to improvise. There's always something a little bit different. There's always something you don't know it's coming. You don't know what Mother Nature is gonna do with the weather, but that's the nature of it, and that's what you have to do. So today we explored different styles, including just dealing with natural light, a little bit of strobing, dealing with some high ISO situations indoors. But these are the compromises you make to get good lighting outside. Hope you enjoyed that. Stay tuned for the next videos, which are going to be about studio lighting and further outdoor and other concepts going on throughout the summer. Thanks a lot.